welcome new supporters, 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐦𝐲 and 𝐼𝐴NCHA90. Thank you for your support. It's much appreciated. Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today's build is the Shatter King update for 8.3. The last time we played it was in 8.2. We played it as a low life build. We switched things up. We're going to play it as a high life and kind of spec into that, so you'll have both options available. Again, you can still play the low life version from 8.2. Everything's basically the same. Still hits really hard. You will have better survivability if you stack a lot of life and you go low life because of the amount of generation of ward that you will get, not to mention that you're generating it as you do hits with most of the skills you use. Now this build revolves around Shatter Strike, and it's Shatter Strike doing 3 hits, and what we're taking advantage of to do a lot of damage, or most damage, is using Firebrand at least 3 times, so that you'll get a critical strike guaranteed with Shatter Strike. On top of that, you'll get 3 hits, they'll all be critical strikes. You'll also get more damage with Shatter Strike for every stack of Firebrand that you have, up to, I think we can get 8 in this build. I think you can get up to 10 total. And the way it works, you also multiply that out by the fact that you have tons of damage elsewhere. For base damage, you're going to have 2 Shattered Lances on for a huge amount of added cold damage and increased melee cold damage. Then you will also get 120% crit multiplier per sword that you have on inside the Shatter Strike tree. And then for passives, every time you use Firebrand, you will gain a stack of Flame Reaver, which also gives you a multiplicative bonus, and you can get up to 10 stacks of that. So if you do 10 hits of Firebrand and then do a hit with Shatter Strike, it is possible to do massive amounts of damage. You can also synergize that with your other skills like Flame Ward for increased damage and Enchant Weapon for more added damage as well as attack speed. It gets absolute bonkers, and as you can see, when you're taking on solo targets, you can just absolutely annihilate them in 1 or 2 hits. On top of that, when you're playing through the campaign, you just kind of want to time yourself so that you can use Shatter Strike often enough. It's going to be your main form of leech. Another reason why we went with high life on this one is because you can now run melee leech on gloves, which helps with the leech of the build, as before when you use 2 one-handed swords of the Shattered Lance, you weren't able to craft melee leech, so it was really painful. Now, the build can be a little squishy as a high life build, so if you have the uniques, the 𝐒𝐭𝐦𝐢𝐴 and Last Steps of the Living, I definitely recommend that you play the low life version. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the skills, the interactions, and just how all of this works. For skills, I'm running Shatter Strike, Focus, Flame Ward, Firebrand, and Enchant Weapon. For Shatter Strike, we have this set up so we basically do as much damage as possible, and it will repeat 3 times, or repeat twice, so we do 3 hits total. We have 2 points in Lingering Chill, 1 point in Breath of Cold, 2 points in Whiteout. This does increase the mana cost almost to what it would normally cost to do 3 casts of it, but now you don't actually have to manually cast it 3 times. Then we've got 5 points in Shiver for 100% increased area and 25% Cold Pen. 4 points in Cold Steel for 120% critical strike multiplier per sword, and we'll be wearing 2 of them, so this is a huge damage boost. 4 points in Absolute Zero for 60% more damage, and 4 points in Cold Presence, so we do 100% more damage against a high health target, which is 65% or more health that they currently have. For Focus, we have this set up to use for mana back if we happen to run out. We have 4 points in Mana Flooded, 1 point in Desperate Meditation, 1 point in Energy Infusion, 4 points in Revelation, 1 point in Resolute Stance, 1 point in Prismatic Stance, and 4 points in Iron Stance for that flat armor. For Flame Ward, we have this set up to increase our cold damage and for defense. We got 5 points in Star Ward Defense, so we get lots of ward, 5 points in Barrier, so we take less hit damage when we have it active, 3 points in Dilation for the maximum duration of it, 1 point in Fire Aura, 1 point in Frost Ward to convert everything to cold for it, and 5 points in Infusion, so we get 250% increased cold damage since it's converted. For Firebrand, we're using this as our buffer. It's our support skill to make our main skill Shatter Strike hit much harder. We have 5 points in Searing Brand so that you deal more damage with it when you use it. It won't do too much damage, but it's enough to do some. 1 point in Incineration so that for every stack of Firebrand you have when you use a melee attack that's not Firebrand, it will deal 20% more damage per stack of Firebrand that you have. 1 point in Illuminating Fire makes it to where if you have 3 or more stacks that are consumed when you do that next melee attack that's not Firebrand, it will be guaranteed to critically strike. 2 points in Wildfire allows us to have more maximum stacks. 3 points in Prio Shielding gives us ward gain whenever we use Firebrand and hit at least one enemy. 4 points in Undying Fire gives increased stack duration. 1 point in Everflames means the stacks are refreshed whenever we hit an enemy and we gain another stack of Firebrand. It's going to refresh all the ones we have so that they won't start dropping off. And 3 points in Fulmination for 9% more attack speed per stack, which is capped at 27% or at 3 stacks. Then for Enchant Weapon, we have this set up for added cold damage, attack speed, and it's going to be free to cast. We've got 4 points in Celerity for more attack speed, 2 points in Shivering Blade for melee chill chance, 5 points in Frostband for that added cold damage and increased melee cold damage, huge bonus to your damage. 1 point in Frozen Sparks, so that for every melee physical damage that you have on the weapon, you'll gain 1 melee lightning and 1 melee cold. We don't have too much on our weapons, but it's enough to get 3 or 4 more cold damage flat just for 1 point. 4 points in Concentration, so it's active longer, and then 4 points in Efficacy for more increased melee elemental damage, as well as it will be free to cast. For passives, I have 21 points in the base Mage class, with 8 points in Elementalist, 5 points in Mage Flurry, and 8 points in Arcanist. We have just over 25 points in the Sorcerer, with 8 points in Brainstorm, 4 points in Wisdom, 8 points in Cryomancer, and 5 points in Chill to the Bone. And then in our Master class, the Spellblade, we have 6 points in Elemental Affinity, 8 points in Infused Weapon, 8 points in Arcane Warden, 1 point in Arcane Shielding, 5 points in Essence Duel, 5 points in Mana Reaver, 5 points in River Blade, 1 point in Gemini, 8 points in Prismatic Blade, 10 points in Volka's Razor, and 10 points in Blade Weaver. And this is what gives you that multiplicative more damage. You can get up to 150% more damage hits with Shatter Strike if you stack up to 10 of these with Firebrand, which is a big damage boost. It'll multiply your damage out by another 150%, which is huge. So for idols, items, blessings, and uniques, you can see that we are wearing some uniques. We are wearing the Shard of the Shattered Lance, and we are wearing 2 of them. These are required if you plan on playing it this way and seeing the damage numbers that we are seeing, and the reason for that is these come with up to 85 melee cold damage added and 100% increased melee cold damage. That's right, on both of these. You can get up to 200% increased melee cold damage and up to 170 flat cold damage. That's absolutely bonkers. And then we are also running the Relic just to complete this set so that we get more health regen, as we are playing a full health build here. However, if you are running the low life version, you don't need the Relic at all. Get rid of it because you don't want the health regen. You're trying to work against that by making your health as low as possible so you can generate more words. So again, if you do the 𝐒𝐭𝐦𝐬 and Last Steps of the Living, get rid of the Relic and go ahead and craft something with health on it instead. For idols, basically what we want is 2 1x4s that give increased melee elemental damage and added flat cold damage. You can also fit in a 1x3 that gives you cold damage doubled if you have more than 300 max mana. And for the 1x3 flats, you can get tons more mana so that you can attack more times with Shatter Strike before having to use Focus. For the 1x1s, just fill in whatever resistance that you are missing. For the crafted gear, I'm just going to hover over them, but basically we're stacking levels to Shatter Strike and elemental damage. That's basically all we're doing. Again, this build planner will be in the description below as well as in the written guide, so feel free to check it out in either spot. And then for blessings, again, just going to hover over them. Nothing really special, nothing build mandatory in the blessing slots. However, you can get some helpful things for defense such as endurance, critical strike avoidance, and things like that. Alright, for the character sheet, you can see we have just over 1800 health. We're working towards getting all of our resistances capped. Don't quite have it yet. This build is not min-maxed. There's definitely room for improvement on it. We're trying to scale up some armor for some damage reduction. For defense, you can see we haven't quite capped critical strike avoidance yet. It's why we look a little squishy in some of the gameplay. Our endurance isn't capped. And then for damage types, we have just over 360% cold damage, as well as, if you count in the 240% critical strike multiplier that we get inside of the Shatter Strike skill tree, we have 500% critical strike multiplier, which is what's huge for the build. Alright, for the skills, skill rotation, and how to use it, I like to put Flame Ward on autocast, and same with Enchant Weapon. Enchant Weapon is something that you want to use when you anticipate needing to do a lot of damage, a rare or a boss. And Flame Ward is something when you anticipate taking a lot of damage. Now, if you want to really min-max the build and have the best playstyle, you want to use those manually when you actually need them. For me, I just like to put them both on autocast. They do both give a damage boost, and that's how you're going to really perform the most damage, is when they're going off together. But you can, of course, do that manually. So for how to play the build, basically all you do is run around, hit some things with Firebrand, try and get at least 3 stacks, a max of 10, and then use a Shatter Strike to just clean up the mess. Now here, without getting too into it, if we just do 3 stacks of Firebrand and then use a Shatter Strike, you're seeing we're doing 200k crits. It's a guaranteed crit, it's getting a more damage modifier, but you can see that it's doing massive amounts of damage. It is doing 3 200k hits. Absolutely bonkers. Now if we sit here and we stack up the full 10 stacks and we wait for Enchant Weapon and Flame Ward to go off and then we do a hit, boom, we're getting 3 hits that hit between 800k, it looked like 800k and 1 million on the very last one. So almost 3 million damage with just one hit if you can get the full 10 stacks of Firebrand up, like we are doing here. Boom, there was 1 million, then about 850, and then a high 700,000 damage hit. And that's all you do. You can do almost 3 million damage to the training dummy, which is about the equivalent of doing 300k hits against a level 100 target. Orbis, as you've seen in the gameplay, we almost killed in one shot by stacking up the full amount of stacks and waiting for that perfect synergy, and almost took it. Now there are other things you can do, like use teleport for increased elemental damage and things like that, that might boost you just enough to one-shot some bosses. Again, the survivability not super high on this build. The low life version is better. If you have 𝐒𝐭𝐦𝐬 and Last Steps to Living, I recommend giving those a try. If you never use Focus because you mostly just use Firebrand and you're using Shatter Strike very minimally, you can definitely throw Teleport or Surge into this build instead. Teleport's going to be a nice movement skill for you. You can definitely replace Focus with that. Alright, that's going to be it for this build guide. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, it's not too much different than the one last patch, so play either way, full life or low life, depending on the uniques that you have. As always, stay safe, travelers, and have a good day.